board members in here.
Hello. Just seeing if anyone's out there. It's Monday afternoon, and we've got the Senate Judiciary and Rules Committee is here. So I figured I'd stream while I watched it. So let's grab the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Nelson, can you hear okay?
I certainly can.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson and Mr. Chair. My question is this, so it looks like this is a brand new.
Is anyone here? Can you actually hear what they're saying?
Significant experience already. Maybe talk about really what interests you in serving in this role, and maybe some of the important skills or personal qualities you bring to it that you think are really important in this role.
This is Senate Judiciary and Rules Committee. They're interviewing Kirk Nelson, who's been appointed to the Sex Offender Registry Board.
Undergoing interview and testing that's on the sex offender parole procedure and important process. That I remain as neutral as possible and look for every opportunity I can to get that person to cooperate.
I think the distortion is on his end.
Successfully pass them on the rest of their unreported sexual history, the good, the not so good, and so forth. What I found over years of doing these is a person does not do well in the criminal justice system, on probation or parole or in treatment if they have skeletons in their closet, if you will, that they haven't disclosed. And understanding that disclosing some of those things could create a potential additional charge, I try to remain as neutral as possible and get the information that I need to help them clear their conscience so that they can have a successful outcome without always more or less trying to get them to tell me enough to report it to law enforcement and get them charged with a new crime. I don't look at that as being a neutral party in this. I don't look at that as being my primary goal or objective when I do these.
Mr. Nelson, just a question on my part. How often does a registered sex offender have to participate in a polygraph?
If they are on parole or probation, it depends on
Here's the agenda for today.
Process. Usually it's twice a year, every 6 months, for what's called a maintenance test, where you can test them over counseling and probation rules and stipulations that they should be following in order to determine whether they're doing their best. And if they haven't, then we talk about it, and I test them to determine whether they're withholding significant information or not. If they're honest to the best of their ability, then we get out of there with a pass, and I look at that as a win-win. If not, then it becomes the job of the counselor or probation or parole officer to determine what happens at that point.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Mr. Nelson, appreciate your interest in serving and being with us today remotely. And as I said, we will take up your vote on your appointment at the next meeting. Thanks for coming and participating.
Could I make one other additional comment if you have just 30 seconds?
Go ahead.
I think one of the hot button issues that's facing the treatment community and the Sex Offender Management Board is the testing with polygraph of juveniles that are into the system. And that's going to be something you have IAPSA that is the board that's kind of recommending, hey, we don't think you should test juveniles because it's too easy to influence them one way or the other. I do a lot of juveniles. I have the Department of Juvenile Corrections contract where I test offenders that are on juvenile probation or at the training center in St. Anthony. I cover this end of the state, so it's the St. Anthony Training Center. And I am a strong advocate of not trying to hard-nose these young people or influence them to say something that isn't the truth. It's better to kind of not handle them with kid gloves because you have tough things to discuss, but it's important that they get through that process, and always take great care in determining before I ever do the testing whether that individual has the cognitive level of ability to make informed decisions as to what they do or don't want to talk about, and I never force anyone to answer questions that they don't want to, adult or juvenile. So, and I think that way we can, if all examiners throughout the state can mirror that mindset, the way I feel based on my years of doing these, it can be a win-win for the juveniles as well as the victims and the court system. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. It looks like Senator Wintrow has another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for a quick comment.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Senator and Mr. Nelson. I really appreciate the time you took to share that. These are very important appointments that the Senate is responsible for confirming. And I think that additional information really shows the depth of which you've thought about this and what are some of the best practices. So I just really appreciate you taking that so seriously, and that kind of information helps us in our decision to do the confirmation. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. I don't see any other questions. Again, Mr. Nelson, I very much appreciate your willingness to serve, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Wish you the best.
Thank you. All right, so Senators, next item on our agenda is we get to hear from our new page, Anna Callahan. Anna, welcome. We talked to you a little bit about the drill. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, and we may have some questions for you. Thanks for taking care of the series.
All right, so I'm gonna mute that. You can always go back and watch the video if you're interested in learning about the new page for Senate Jude Rules, but I just wanted to be able to share what's going on in this committee. So I'm going to bring up that other screen. Takes me just a second to get it over. So this is the agenda for today. By the way, you can find all these agendas. There's two ways to get to them. You can go to the committee pages on the legislative website, or you can go to the daily committee summary, which is what I often use. And these are linked directly from that page. This is the link I used to get the video that we're watching now. Down at the bottom, you can register to testify if you want to testify on anything, either remotely or in person. Even if you're going to be in person, it helps to register beforehand because it's oftentimes first come, first serve. Down here, you can see who's on the committee. The chairman is Senator Todd Lakey from District 23. That's south and west of Ada County. It's a lot of rural area. It includes Kuna. It's all of Owyhee County, a bit of Ada County, and a bit of Canyon County. Senator Lakey, he's been the chair of the Jude and Rules Committee for a long time. He is an attorney by trade. His practice does representation for cities. My city of Eagle is represented by Senator Lakey's firm. Vice chairman is freshman Senator Brandon Shippey from District 9. District 9 is over on the west side. A little bit of Canyon County, Washington County, and I think a bit of Adams County. So it's over there. And then you've also got Senator Doug Ricks, Senator Dan Foreman, Senator Dave Lent, Senator Brian Lenny, who will be presenting his RS today. Senator Josh Kaiser is another freshman. Senator Melissa Wintrow and Senator James Ruckty are your two Democrats. But after the page is done talking, looks like she wrote a speech. Good for her. We will see a couple of new rules: alcohol testing, Idaho State Veterans Cemetery fees, Idaho State Veterans Cemetery's adoption of a temporary rule. These aren't going to be super interesting to most people, but it will be interesting to see how the process works, how the committee hears these rules from, in this case, we've got Chief of Staff, Idaho State Police, we've got Administrator of the Division of Veteran Services. So we'll see how members of the bureaucracy of the state government come in and present these proposed rule changes. In the past, they used to only have to pass a rule through one side or the other, the Senate or the House. Last year, Speaker Moyle pushed through a new rule that said that any bureaucratic rules must be approved by both sides, which is good. And then finally, what we've all come here to see is Senator Lenny presenting his RS for anti-SLAPP. I mentioned this on Idaho Signal earlier today. Anti-SLAPP. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. That's right there in the text. And the point of that is that if somebody doesn't like what you're saying, they want to shut you down, they want to turn off your voice, your ability to speak your mind and influence people in usually a political arena, they might sue you. Say you're being defamatory, slanderous, libelous. And oftentimes those lawsuits can last years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and put you through tremendous stress. And at the end, the judge might say, well, after all this, I'm going to dismiss this because it's obviously frivolous and it's just designed to shut down your voice. What an anti-SLAPP statute would do is create a tool for the judge to do that on day one. To just look at the lawsuit and say, is this actually frivolous? Is this trying to shut down someone's voice? If so, dismissed right now. And then it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't take up time. Senator Lenny brought this bill last year and got it through committee, got it to the Senate floor, and several senators voted against it, enough to kill it. Why? Most likely because they just didn't like Senator Lenny. And unfortunately, that's how it's often done in the Capitol. It's a lot of personal nonsense. So hopefully with the change in makeup of the Senate this year, we'll get it through, because it's a no-brainer. It's just something that people on both sides support. Even California has an anti-SLAPP statute. It doesn't mean that you can just go out there and start defaming people. What it means is that judges have a tool to dismiss obviously frivolous lawsuits. Let's see what the page Miss Callahan is saying.
18 and you have to be 35 to run. Not just yet, but I have been gathering people to serve as ambassadors and maybe, elected positions. So I already have an ambassador picked out. She said she wanted Ireland. So.
Good call. This is Senator Shippey. Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to say I really appreciate your response there. I appreciate your position on your politics. Thank you.
Other questions, Senator Lenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said you wanted, first thing you said, I chuckled at audibly. You said you can't wait to get a Costco membership.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing on the Costco menu?
I really like the pizza. The hot dogs I'm not a fan of. I've been hearing about that chicken bake though, and I kind of want to go try it. So that sounds good, but I'm gonna have to go with the frozen yogurt.
Is there first? Okay, no other questions. Anna, thanks. We're very work ethic and looking forward to working together. Okay. Senators, now we'll move on to our rules, and I will turn the gavel over to Senator Shippey and let you go ahead and start.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first docket up is 11-0301-2401, rules covering alcohol testing. And we have the pleasure of having Lieutenant Colonel Russ Wheatley, Chief of Staff with ISP. Welcome, Colonel. If you would introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Let me know if you can't hear anything. I switched the microphone. I realized it was taking the webcam mic instead of the good mic.
Chairman Lakey, Vice Chair Shippey, and members of the committee, my name is Russ Wheatley. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel with the State Police, and I serve as ISP Police Officer. I've been in this role for 4 months, so this should be good. You all have in front of you ISP Rule 110301, which are our rules governing alcohol testing. So as in our review of this rule, we intended to remove any unnecessary and unburdensome language and clarify the language as needed. As we work through the negotiated process, which I think is important here, we received a lot of feedback.
I guess I'll switch the audio back then.
Some of the language. What we're proposing today is a result of our review and our input of our stakeholders as it was provided. Our changes do not impact this rule from our perspective. It does not impact the rule's intent, process, or application in any way. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Colonel. Committee, any questions? Senator Winthrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Lieutenant Colonel Wheatley, it's so good to see you. So I just want to confirm, and maybe you want to go through the rules a little bit. When I was reviewing them last night, what I was looking for, recognizing that we're talking about breath tests, and that there might be some question marks about it. I was thinking to myself as I read, let's see what those changes are, and are there any substantive due process issues or changes, right? So I know every agency in our, I know the governor is very diligent on reducing red tape and doing the, making sure everything's efficient and so
Here's
forth.
the actual rule.
But maybe you can kind of take us through some of the changes to ensure that some of these things will clean up efficiencies and not making changes like in process, due process. Am I being kind of clear there? It took me a long way to get to
Chairman
that.
Shippey, Senator Wintrow, I think our perspective is just that we didn't change the intent or processes within the changes that were made there.
Okay.
I'm happy to, if we'd like to go through, sort of the red line pieces. I've got some experts with me too, if there are specific questions, but I really do feel like it is our position that we didn't change anything substantive.
Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Lieutenant Colonel. Maybe it would be helpful if in the negotiated rulemaking process, if there were, as the stakeholders came together and said, hey, I'm having a struggle here, would you change this? Maybe just hone in on the places that you feel like you've addressed those concerns. And so I can feel comfortable knowing that. Does that feel okay?
Yeah. Colonel.
Yeah, Vice Chair Shippey and Senator Wintrow. So as we engaged or embarked on the negotiated rulemaking process, we did have 3 meetings that were published from the ISP's perspective. When we did the first cuts of this, we actually got feedback that we had cut too much from the defense bar, that they felt like we had cut too much out of the rule that was going to absolutely change how the rule was, translated by the courts, how they were going to interpret what we were doing. So my understanding on that is that we took that feedback from the defense bar, put quite a bit of that language back in, and then that was where it landed. Which is the version you have today. I've got a whole laundry list of the communications and the hearings if that's needed for today.
Looks like it's a lot of just
like there was
tweaking the wording of this stuff.
Communication with our partners in this thing to make sure that we weren't
Very, very, very much inside baseball for all the rules regarding alcohol testing.
Thank you, Colonel.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public?
So yeah, it looks like it's a lot of inside baseball stuff,
Discussion.
which is a good reminder of what our legislators have to do. They're confronted with this and they have to make a decision. Is this something to approve?
Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm the only woman on the committee, so I guess I'm going to take advantage of that position. But I just really appreciate.
I'm not quite sure what Senator Wintrow is going for there.
Anytime we're looking at rules, I take this very seriously, as we all do, and we just want to make sure we're balanced in that and making sure that we can be efficient, we can clean things up. But we're not affecting that due process. And it seems that if no one's testifying against, we must be okay there. And I feel good about that. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you.
There's one thing to learn about senators specifically. They like to hear themselves talk.
Senator Foreman.
For a motion.
Motion's in order.
I move that docket 11-03 01-2401 be accepted.
We have a motion and a second.
Any discussion?
Committee, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The docket is approved. Thank you, Colonel Wheatley. Safe travels. Our next docket number is 21-0104-2402, rules governing Idaho State Veteran Cemeteries. And we have the pleasure of having Chief Administrator Mark Champu. I'm saying, maybe not quite saying that right. Of
Shampel.
the Idaho Division of Veteran Services. Welcome, Mr. Champu. And if you would introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I'm Mark Chample, the Chief Administrator for the Idaho
Oh,
Division
you
of
got
Veteran Services. And I'm pleased to present Rule Docket number 21-0104-2402, which relates to the amendments to IDAPA 21.01.04 rules governing Idaho State Veteran Cemeteries.
Yes, that's this one.
This rule change expands eligibility for burial in the Idaho State Veteran Cemeteries to traditional National Guardsmen and reservists. These individuals completed their enlistment or commissions honorably and deserve the right to be buried with their brothers and sisters in arms. But unfortunately, because they were never federally activated for 180 days or more, they do not meet the federal definition of a veteran, and the VA will not provide a burial benefit for them. These newly eligible individuals who wish to be buried in one of the state veteran cemeteries will have to cover the cost of burial equivalent to the VA plot allowance benefit, which is currently $978, as well as the cost of the memorial marker, either $400 for an upright casket marker or $250 for all the other types of interment marker types. Additionally, this amendment to these rules removes redundant language that is already present in section 65-107 of Idaho Code. And if this looks familiar, this is the exact same rules that we tried to run last year that passed both Senate committee and House committee, but due to an administrative error, did not get sent to the floor for concurrence. So we're representing it again this year, but it's the exact same as last year. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chample. Any questions, committee?
Mr. Chairman, just for a comment.
Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chample, appreciate you bringing this back. I think this is certainly the right thing to do. You have reservists or guardsmen that may not do their full 20 or be deployed for that long of a period, but their service for that period of time, either initial enlistment or the 4 years, certainly is still very valuable to our country and our community. So I think this is great. Thank you.
Seems like a
Senator
pretty
Gorman.
pretty basic.
Thank you,
Roll.
Mr. Chair. If there's no other comments for a motion.
Motion is. Are there any comments from the public? Thank you, Mr. Chample.
Senator Shippey is getting a
Motion's in order.
trial by fire
Thank you,
here,
Mr.
learning how
Chair.
to chair
I
the
move
meeting.
that, docket 21-04, correction 21-0104-2402 be accepted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. All right. Motion passes. And I apologize, Mr. Chample. Thank you for being kind to stay. You have the next docket, excuse me, which will be 21-0104-2401, rules governing Idaho State Veteran Cemeteries. So if you please reintroduce yourself, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Again, I'm Mark Chample, Chief Administrator for the Idaho Division of Veteran Services. And again, this rule docket pertains to the exact same thing I just read. This is the temporary rule that we actually were operating under so that we could actually start doing those National Guard and Reservist interments over the last year. This is just to approve that temporary rule so we can continue. I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Any questions, committee? Thank you, Mr. Chample. Any public comment at this point?
So this is a temporary rule to do what they want to do with the proposed permanent rule.
I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I move that we approve docket 21-0104-2401.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve this docket. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. And the motion passes.
There we go.
Mr. Chappell, thank you for coming in. This concludes our dockets for today, and I will turn back over to the gavel to our chairman, Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Senator Shippey. Well done. So next we have RS 31860.
All right.
Senator Lenny, welcome to the committee. You know the drill. Please state your name and who you represent, and then go ahead and tell us about the RS.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Lenny, Nampa, Idaho, District 13. For those of you who were in this committee last year, this will be familiar. If you're not, this will be brand new. I am presenting RS 31860. This is a bill that's about protecting free speech in Idaho by discouraging SLAPP lawsuits. Now, a SLAPP lawsuit stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation, and these are lawsuits that powerful people and or organizations use to intimidate or silence others who speak out against them. And they do this by attempting to shut down public criticism, by making it too expensive and or too time consuming for regular people or smaller organizations without a lot of resources to fight in a courtroom. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy explained in a press release from September 2023, I should back up, New Jersey passed a law. Several states have been passing anti-SLAPP laws recently. So one of those was New Jersey, and their governor said in 2023, for too long, powerful individuals have misused the legal system to block free speech by filing bogus lawsuits. Their goal is to silence critics who don't have the money or time to defend themselves in court. So right now, Idaho is one of only 15 states with literally zero anti-SLAPP protection. 35 other states have some form of protection. Idaho is not one of them, hence this bill. This bill aims to change that. And a couple things it does here, kind of the 100,000-foot view, is it expedites the process for handling frivolous lawsuits. It puts lawsuits on hold as someone files a anti-SLAPP motion. So if this goes through and becomes law, it kind of does a timeout on the lawsuit so people don't just run up the clock.
Yes, this is Senator Brian Lenny of Nampa, District 13.
It sets clear rules.
His beard's a little longer.
quickly
He's got glasses
dismissing
on, but yeah,
cases
it's
that are
still Brian Lenny.
baseless. So right now, and forgive me, Senator Ruffey, I'm not a lawyer, and Senator Lakey, but right now there's a motion to dismiss, or the ability to kind of throw out a bogus lawsuit typically happens on the back end of the lawsuit. So all this does is take that ability and it gives a judge a mechanism for basically throwing out a bogus lawsuit on the front end. So it kind of does the same thing. It just, if you do it on the front end, then you're not racking up legal bills and being buried in court for God knows how long. So it sets a clear rules for doing that. And also what it does is it allows the winning side to recover their legal costs, including attorney fees. So the benefits of this bill, again, high level, I think are pretty simple. It helps resolve SLAPPs faster and more efficiently. Again, think about being buried in court for a year or 2 years, having to pay a lawyer every month. This happens.
He's talking a little bit too long, I think. This is just a print hearing to get the bill printed, so it should be just a high-level overview. But
it deters something.
far be it from me to second-guess
So
the
if you
senator.
imagine if you're going to have a lawsuit, and you could technically have that lawsuit in a number of states. A state like Idaho is a prime target because we have no anti-SLAPP statute right now, so it would be easier to file and win a bogus lawsuit in Idaho versus states who have a protection for this. And the last thing it does is it includes automatic penalties for SLAPP filers, which should discourage these cases from ever being filed in the first place. So again, this is a bill that protects free speech in Idaho, and Mr. Chair and committee, I would ask that you would print it because good people don't deserve to get buried for exercising their First Amendment rights. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Lenny. Committee members, any questions for Senator Lenny?
Winthrop.
Okay, I don't see any. Senator Lenny, you can come back up and join us. For you new senators, we don't take any comment on a print for a bill. We just, if it's printed, then we have our regular hearing and folks have their opportunity to look at the bill and comment.
It's different than
So with
how
that, we have
Representative Brett
RS
Crane handles House State Affairs, where he wants them to kill bills they don't like before they're even
Motion's
printed.
in order, Senator, go ahead.
I move we send RS 31860 to print.
Have a motion from Senator Foreman. Do I have a second? Second from Senator Ruckty.
Shippey was going to second, but he
Any
wasn't fast
discussion
enough.
on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries and RS 31860 will be sent to print. Thank you, Senator Lenny. All right, committee members, this concludes our first meeting. Again, appreciate everyone being with us today, and we are adjourned.
Excellent.
You're watching Committee Room WW54. Hardware and closed captioning for Idaho in session is provided by the Idaho Legislature.
I'm trying to find my right
Idaho
screen here.
Legislative Services Office. Additional funding is provided by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
There we go. So good news. Senator Lenny's bill. I'm going to switch my microphone here. I'll stop that. Senator Lenny's anti-SLAPP bill will be heard by the committee, so probably later this week when Senate Jude and Rules meets again. We'll see it again. Head over to the session snapshot, remember, at gemstatechronicle.com. It's just linked right here at the top. If you're on mobile, this little menu will appear on mobile and you can click it and it's the same thing. Just go to session snapshot. Right now I've got 3 bills up so far and they are all, accidentally hit the wrong thing there. All 3 bills on the session snapshot so far, House Bills 2, 6, and 7 are Representative Skogg's bills. Bruce Skogg of Nampa, District 10. He wants to raise the threshold for initiatives to become law from 50% plus 1 to 60%. He wants to expand the Attorney General's authority so he can prosecute or at least investigate county officials city officials. I keep getting this mixed up because, let's hop over to it. Yeah, the Attorney General already has the ability to investigate county officials who are accused of crimes, criminal behavior, not civil behavior. Representative Skogg clarified that. But there's a loophole in that he cannot investigate city officials. So this legislation would close that loophole. And finally, Representative Skogg's bill setting a mandatory minimum fine of $300 for possession of marijuana under 3 ounces. So those are up on the snapshot. I will be adding more as the bills get printed. We come over to the legislature here, and we see there's only a few bills. So far, the Senate has not printed any bills, but Senator Lenny's anti-SLAPP bill will be one of the first. It will be, Senate Bill 1001, or depending on what happened this morning. But yeah, the House is off and running. So some of these are not, super interesting, like Internal Revenue Code references. It's a bill they have to pass every year to just change references to federal law. Cybersecurity, I'm not sure that's worth doing a thing. It just says that state employees have to use 2-factor authentication when they're accessing state resources, which is, I think, reasonable coming from an IT background. I use 2-factor for almost everything. It means that even if someone somehow hacks my account and gets my password, unless they have my phone and can unlock my phone with my face and look up the proper code, which changes every 30 seconds, then they're not going to be able to get in. So I think that's totally reasonable. Helps keep our state resources secure. Yeah, and like this public utility regulation, I was just looking at this earlier. This is, go through relevant code and streamline and simplify. That's at some point, if somebody wants to go read that, go for it. But it's usually just tweaking words here and there. So yeah, that is your legislative day. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll do a live stream, but I'll be at the Capitol tomorrow, and we'll bring you whatever is going on. Also, remember to watch Idaho Signal every day at 11:30 p.m. or 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And that's Mountain Standard Time. Or is it Mountain Daylight Time? I guess it's daylight time. It's Mountain Time, which means it's an hour earlier if you're up in the Panhandle. So I will see you then. Have a good afternoon.